I'm Pastor Jeff Johnson, and this is the resumption of the Lenten Luncheon Series at First Lutheran Church here in Brockton. Let's give it a big hand. This series is approximately 40 years old, and in its inception, I guess in the 1980s, it was designed for businessmen to come in and to eat a quick lunch prepared by the Pastor's Aid Society of First Lutheran Church, and to hear a lecture or some sort of speaker, and then go back to work. So it's very much designed in that way. Certainly a lot of things have changed. We have all sorts of speakers. It is not a businessmen's luncheon. It's an everybody luncheon. But I'm thrilled that you're back. And it's nice for those of you watching on the Cable Access. Brockton Cable Access is here. And we have about 25 people here today, which is great. We're thrilled with that. So I'm going to be the first speaker, or first act, shall we say, for it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The last speaker we had, and I'm just doing a little chronology here, before we locked down during the pandemic, was Mayor Bob Sullivan, our mayor. And I remember him being in this room and people saying, well, how should we feel about the pandemic? You know, or what should we do? And you could tell the pressure and the anxiety was mounting. And the good news is that we're back, we're safe, we're here, and I just want to talk about what's happened at First Lutheran a little bit. The first thing I want you to bring your attention to is this beautiful room. This room, when you saw it last at this function, had sort of a brownish, mauvish, southwestern color all over it, and the wainscoting was very dark. It was darker than these doors, in fact. And the radiators were unpainted, and we decided during the lockdown we did a lot of church projects that we could do while people weren't here, and one of those was to paint this, and the church graciously, generously had it painted this sort of very New England blue, and this, it was very Cape Cod, you know, this wainscoting. In fact, this blue is in my stairwell in my own home, so we're very proud of that. So welcome back to a very clean, beautiful, bright space. Today, obviously, the lunches are being coordinated once again by Pastor's Aid. And if you notice, I gave you all cards, advertisement cards with it. Please take those with you. All the menus on these lunches were created back in the 80s by Elsa Pearson, who unfortunately left us to enter the greater church and the glory of God in December. But Elsa created a number of, not only the setup, but the menus that you see in front of you, and they're in tribute to her. So today is American chop suey, and Jean Ellen, this is her recipe? Indeed. Okay, so, and I would like to thank our Pastor's Aid Society for being here today to cook so graciously for us, to prepare portions for us that are safe. If you need to take some home, please talk to them about that. It's a great day in the neighborhood. I'm just so happy that the light is streaming through these windows and that you are here. Now, in creating a program, our great friend Ann Beauregard, who's over here by Nina, helped find a number of the speakers, and she also asked me to be one of the speakers, and for 2 years before the lockdown, I did a Broadway program. And I used to work in theater pretty extensively. And this is just really a Broadway sing-along, but we're going to have some fun with it and talk about things and a little learning. So we're going to talk about that. There is something that is indigenous to America, are a couple of things. Jazz. Jazz is our own distinctive art form, which began in New Orleans and that part of the world, as well as the Broadway musical, which of course comes out of opera and operetta and what you would have seen in Europe. You would have gone to the theater, the music hall in Britain, that's what they call that. But it's really also a Jewish amalgamation, and it all started in the Lower East Side of New York and moved up, because that's where immigrants came in to New York was vis-a-vis, obviously, Ellis Island, but also the Lower East Side, which is typically the poorest at that time. And so as you got richer, you moved up the island. And so the theater began in the Yiddish theater there, largely, and they moved up to Midtown, which we know as Broadway, which is Times Square and all of that, and thank God that has come back to life too. So we're thrilled that you're here. A word about masks. We now are under this sort of no mask zone, or using your best discretion, and that's what I'm asking you all to do. If you feel more comfortable wearing a mask, please do. I understand that. I'm not a policeman. I'm not going to enforce that. However, in the same regard, we want your health, and we want that to be you to feel safe here while you're at First Lutheran. We reopened our doors to public worship in August of 2020. So you can imagine that, with social distancing, taping, masks, one door to go in, that sort of thing. And in all that time, with the return of all the churches that worship here, our 12-step groups, our preschool, our counseling service, all those ministries, all those people, we do not know of one person who walked away with COVID for being at First Lutheran. So that is largely due to the work of Nina Sousa, the assistant to the pastor, and the staff. So in the same regard, we don't want that to happen here. Now we're going to be singing, and it's really hard to sing without a mask, with a mask on. So I'm going to let you choose that. You know, however you let your conscience be your guide with this. I am triple vaccinated, and if you need a test, a rapid test, Nina's got some in her office. By the way, if you need rapid tests, we do have some from the city. So I feel safe about where I am right now. So anyway, but thank you for observing safety and things like that. So back to Broadway. What I'd like to start with is just some stuff I like, and we're going to, if you look at your song sheets, we're going to play a little bit of game, and you're going to tell me what this is from. So you're going to tell me where these are from, and I'll talk a little bit about these musicals or their composers. But I can't think of anything that has its own personal stamp on America, and expressing who America is then, shall we say, Broadway. And in turn, we could even go further on into rhythm and blues and rock music and rap and things like that. But this is really the first thing that is really the American popular art form. Before the Beatles in the 1960s, this sort of music were the top 10, top hundreds. This was the Billboard chart, were these tunes. And then the Beatles come in and change all that up, okay, as to what were people listening to. And this meant everyone, from very young people to very young at heart people. So anyway, so Broadway has this distinct theme. And we're still redoing the musicals. As you know, there's a new film version of West Side Story out that Steven Spielberg was a big piece of, but originally a Massachusetts boy wrote the music for that. Who do you know wrote the music for West Side Story? What Massachusetts boy composed the tunes for that?
Lawrence, Massachusetts?
No, who's the composer?
From Lawrence.
I think so, yes. Who is that? Thank you, Leonard Bernstein. Yeah. Okay, that's a Massachusetts boy, went to Harvard, all of that kind of stuff, and then broke out as this great, shall we say, classical performer, but he also did quite well in the world of Broadway and pop music too. So, but I'm not going to do Bernstein right now, but here we go. Yeah.
Could you just introduce yourself? I have not put it on, but so we'll want to go back.
Okay, hi there. Welcome to First Lutheran, and Pastor Jeff Johnson here at our First Lenten Luncheon Series. It's all Broadway. So, here we go. The first song, I'm going to sing it, but you can join with me in the chorus. But tell me, it's from a musical I'm sure none of you have seen, called Girl Crazy. But a very famous person made this song very famous. She had the voice like a hurricane. She had a voice like a hurricane. Does anybody know who that is? Thank you, whoever said that. Ethel Merman made this song very famous, and this is what made her famous. I don't know anything about Girl Crazy, the musical, but in early musicals, the plots were essentially like Bazooka Bubblegum comic strips. There was very little plot to early Broadway musicals. This was about really reviews. Think about the Ziegfeld Follies, which were sort of musicals, but it was really about singing a song and dance, walking off, and here came something else. Nothing to do with a plot, maybe a theme, but you know, a plot. And the same thing could be said about vaudeville or burlesque or any of those things. It wasn't about plots. So, I don't know anything about Girl Crazy that much. I don't even know if it's been revived, but this is the most famous song for it. It's got a little introduction, and bear with me. Here we go. Days can be sunny with never sun. Don't be nobody tonight. Birds in the trees sing their grateful song. I should sing along. I'm sure all day happy with my heart. How do I get that way? Look at what I got. Here we go. Tell me if you know this tune. I got rhythm, I got music, I got my memories for a good time. I got these things, these rascals. I got my memories for a good time. Oh, that trouble, I don't So that's an early, shall we say, Broadway tune. And what we saw was that these songs became so popular that people embraced them as sort of what they heard on the radio, probably mostly radio, and that could make it out to the show. Many people have covered that song, meaning sung it also and recorded it since Ethel Merman. The first person who comes to mind is the greatest entertainer of the 20th century, according to Frank Sinatra. Does anybody know who the greatest entertainer of the 20th century was? According to Sinatra. Woman, I'll give you a hint. It's a woman. What was that again? The greatest entertainer of the 20th century.
Kate Smith.
According to Frank Sinatra. Somewhere over Garland is the greatest entertainer of the 20th century. Any just watching her. She's an amazing performer. But no Garland. She covered, though, I've Got Rhythm. Now, we're on to the next thing, and I got inspired last night. And the music of Fats Waller. How many of you ever heard of Fats Waller? Good. He was a rhythm and blues dude. His full name was Thomas Fats Waller. He was from, I believe, St. Louis. I could be wrong about that. But he ended up, like all African Americans, in what part of New York? Harlem. Okay, and that's where what famous musical club was? The Cotton Club. Okay? If you were anything, you started the Cotton Club. If you were black. Okay? And trust me, a lot of white people came uptown, took the A train, all the way up to go to the Cotton Club. There's even a movie based on the Cotton Club. But anyway, he, Josephine Baker, all sorts of people like that performed there. So, but anyway, he's associated with that, but also as a great composer. And his most famous song that comes off the top of my head is Ain't Misbehavin'. And he was a wonderful pianist. He studied classically too. And so he had, shall we say, chops, what we like to say. And he also had this extraordinary expression in him. So here is Ain't Miss the Haven from, it's from, oh, I didn't know this. It's from a musical entitled Connie's Hot Chocolate, which is kind of interesting, but that was his title for it, but Connie's Hot Chocolates. And I don't know, once again, anything about the plot or what kind of musical it was, but this was the big takeaway. The first thing I'm going to do is play a piano version of it that he wrote that's really kind of cool, and then we can all sing it if you want to. So here we go, Ain't Misbehaving. music types that come from musicals that we don't hear much anymore, but they're very, very famous songs that come from them. So we see this evolution. Now, next on our agenda here is, we're going to fast forward to the late 1930s, 40s actually, and we have a song entitled, "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning." Does anybody know what musical that's from? Oh, see, you can name that immediately. And who were the composers by Oklahoma? The song, the lyricist, and the tune writer? Rogers and Hammerstein. Okay, and previously it had been Richard Rogers and Lorenz Clark. So this was his new buddy, his new colleague who helped him write all these great musicals. And there's a whole bunch of repertoire by Rogers and Hart that are so beautiful. Things like Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, things like that. Oh, great tunes. So, but that's another lecture. But anyway, so we're going to take a look at Oklahoma, which is a landmark musical because of these things. It's not cute. It's very shadowy. We have a murder in it, a murderer in it. And it's also ends happy, happy, happy because Oklahoma is no longer a territory, it becomes a state. But it has this very complex plot in it, as well in the middle of it, a ballet. Okay? So you go see it on the stage, and not the old 50s version with Shirley Jones, which is lovely. You'll still see that ballet, which is quite extraordinary. There is a ballet in the film too, but the original ballet was choreographed by Agnes Mill. And so this was a thing, and it was revolutionary on Broadway, and it's been revised lots of times on Broadway, as well as I can't think of any high school that has not attempted to pull it off in the last, I don't know, probably the 40s, almost 80 years of its inception. I have never done it though, but it is a great, great thing. So let's sing, Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. Okay, and if I don't hear you, we'll do it again. What musical is it from? Exactement. Okay, and I'll give you a little trivia. It's not really a part, it's a separate, it was not created by Rogers and Hammerstein. There's some weirdness with it. And if you see the stage version, it's the first thing you hear. It's early on in the musical. There isn't a puppet show. That's purely for the film. So, but it's a lot of fun to sing. In fact, if you ever try to see the stage version of Sound of Music, it's very different in many scenes. There are scenes, the characters, the Baroness and Max, they're completely developed and very interesting. But the stage version is very different than the film version. And who premiered that role of Maria in the stage version? Very good. This is my brother. Very remarkable. Okay, and obviously we know who did the film version. And another musical that every high school in America tries to reproduce at some time or another. The other cool thing about it, I have performed it, but I've been in the pit orchestra for it. But the other thing cool about it is that it's largely based on folk style music. They were this is Hammerstein's last musical too, because he died shortly thereafter. But it's very simple in, shall we say, its harmonic structure, and you hear lots of waltzes there, and we're about to sing another piece from it. But it's like folk tunes, largely, whereas the other musicals are much more complex compositionally. But anyway, so, here we go. Lonely Goat-Bird, and try your best with yodeling. We're going to take it a little slow. So the words are... Make something up. If you go la 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 la, that's fine too. All right, but just have fun with it. I'm going to take it just a little under tempo, okay? Here we go. What's the voice? Folks in the town that remember even in the film version, the puppet show, there's a lot of like, what do we do next? And so it's not an easy song to pull off, but it's a lot of fun to sing. And I imagine like in a beer hall, you know, after a couple of beers, it's lots of fun to sing. So, okay, conversely, we have another song from the same musical, Edelweiss, which is what? What is Edelweiss? It's a flower, exactly, alrighty? And obviously it's a piece of Austrian resistance too. It's a great symbol for that because the Nazis were taking over Austria, annexing it, and the Von Trapps had to get out. So, so it's a piece of resistance. It's also a waltz, so you'll hear it in 3/4 time. And also, it probably of any of the tunes has the most folk nature to it. So, let's try some Edelweiss. probably my favorite Roger and Hammerstein musical is this one. Does anybody know where You'll Never Walk Alone is from? It's their real masterpiece. It's after Oklahoma. Carousel. Carousel is the real masterpiece. It's an extraordinary musical, and I entreat any of you to go see it at any time. It's shadowy. It does not end happy. It's a lot more of a slice of life, and it all takes place on the coast of Maine in the 19th century. Okay? Lots of great dance and lots of great tunes, wonderful characters, but Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote this thing and premiered in the early 40s as young people, especially young couples, brides saw their husbands go off to war, not knowing if they'll come back. So there's a definite piece of, I don't know, in this musical, and fate being at hand, what is the world going to hand us? And now, this You'll Never Walk Alone has kind of almost become like a hymn. In fact, the musical directions to the pianist at the beginning, it says, in the manner of a hymn. So, and I've seen it used in movies. Jerry Lewis used to sing it on the telephone all the time. And it's even got kind of probably taken out of proportion. So it's probably my favorite song from the musical. But indeed, I think it's much bigger than what it is. So before we finish, thank you for coming today. Gianna's back there. I'm sure there are to-go things if you want some to-go food. Next week is Jamie Hodges, who is an extraordinary young person who ran for city office recently. She is going to be speaking next week, and I'm sure the food is fabulous. It's on your card somewhere. And we have a nice slate of speakers this whole time. I'll sing it through once, and then we'll go back and sing it together. So You'll Never Walk Alone from Carousel.
Oh
thank you for coming today. I hope you had a good time. Please see if you need some food to take. Please go to the kitchen and see if that happens. Please bring a friend. If anybody wants extra postcards, I've got them. And we'll see you next week, okay? All right, thank you. All right, bye-bye.